The rain came out of nowhere, a sudden deluge that turned the office parking lot into a shallow lake and sent us scrambling for cover. It was a Friday evening, the kind where you're already mentally checked out, dreaming of takeout and a quiet night in. I'd stayed late to finish a report, and now I was stranded, my car a blurry shape through the sheets of water hammering the windows. That's when my colleague, Lucas Grant, offered me a lifeline. Crash at my place till it clears. It's just down the road, I hesitated. Staying over at a coworker's house. Felt like crossing a line, but with the storm raging and no better options, I agreed. What I thought would be a simple pit stop turned into a night I'd never forget, a twist so wild it still spins in my head. Here's how it unfolded. In 3 parts. I'm Jenna Harper, 29, a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized ad agency. Lucas, 34, was our graphic designer, tall, lanky, with a mop of sandy hair and a dry wit that made team meetings bearable. We weren't close, just friendly enough for coffee runs or the occasional deadline gripe. His house was a 5-minute drive, he'd said, and with the rain showing no mercy, it beat waiting in a soggy lobby. I grabbed my bag, he tossed me an umbrella that barely held up, and we dashed to his car, laughing as the wind snatched it away. By the time we pulled up to his place, I was soaked, shivering, and ready for a towel and a couch. I didn't expect the night to take a turn that would leave me questioning everything. The rain battered Lucas's car like a drum roll as we sped through the blurred streets, wipers slashing at the windshield. "This is insane," I said, peeling off my drenched jacket, the fabric sticking to my arms. Water dripped onto the passenger seat, and I winced. "Sorry about the mess. Don't sweat it," Lucas replied, his eyes on the road, a faint grin tugging at his lips. "Car's seen worse." His voice was calm, steady, the kind that cut through the storm's chaos. We pulled into a quiet cul-de-sac, his house a modest 1-story with peeling blue paint and a sagging porch. The lights glowed warm through the downpour, a beacon against the gray. Inside, the place smelled faintly of cedar and old books. The living room cluttered with art supplies, sketch pads, pencils, a half-finished canvas propped against the wall. "Make yourself at home," he said, tossing me a towel from a hall closet. "I'll grab some dry clothes." I rubbed my hair, grateful for the warmth, as he disappeared upstairs. The rain drummed the roof, a relentless tattoo, and I sank onto a worn plaid couch, scanning the room. A shelf held sci-fi novels, a framed photo of Lucas with a dog, a scruffy mutt with a lolling tongue, and a stack of vinyl records. It was cozy, lived in, a slice of him I hadn't expected. He returned with a gray sweatshirt and sweatpants, both too big but dry. "Best I've got," he said, shrugging. I ducked into the bathroom to change, the mirror showing a drowned rat, mascara smudged, hair plastered to my scalp. I laughed despite myself, tugging on the clothes, the sleeves swallowing my hands. Back in the living room, Lucas had lit a small fireplace, the crackle mingling with the rain's roar. "Tea? Coffee?" he asked, already heading to the kitchen. "Tea," I said, settling by the fire. He returned with 2 steaming mugs, handing me one chamomile. Its scent soothing. "Thanks for this," I said, cradling it. "Didn't expect to be a refugee tonight." "Storms sneak up," he replied, sitting across from me in an armchair, his own mug balanced on his knee. "Happened last month, too. Flooded my basement." We sipped in companionable silence, the fire casting shadows on the walls. I was about to ask about the dog in the photo, when a sharp thud echoed from upstairs, loud enough to make me jump. "What was that?" I asked, my mug wobbling. Lucas frowned, setting his tea down. "Probably the wind. Old house, creaks a lot." He stood, but his posture stiffened, his eyes flicking to the ceiling. Another thud, softer but deliberate, like footsteps. My stomach tightened. "Stay here," he said, grabbing a flashlight from a drawer. "I'll check." "Alone?" I stood, unease prickling my skin. "What if it's not the wind?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, come with." We climbed the narrow stairs, the beam of his flashlight slicing through the dark. The air grew colder, the rain's drum beat louder, and my pulse quickened. At the top, a hallway stretched left and right, closed doors, a faint draft. Another sound, a low scrape, came from the room at the end. Lucas gripped the flashlight tighter, his jaw set. "Probably nothing," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. The night had just taken its first strange turn, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. The hallway felt narrower as we crept forward, the flashlight's beam jittering across faded wallpaper and scuffed floorboards. Rain lashed the windows, a steady roar that swallowed smaller sounds. But that scrape lingered in my ears, sharp and out of place. Lucas led, his shoulders tense, the sweatshirt I wore brushing my knuckles as I followed. "Could be a branch," he said, more to himself than me, but the doubt in his tone mirrored mine. We reached the door at the end, a plain wooden one, slightly ajar. He pushed it open, the hinges creaking, and swept the light inside. It was a spare room, sparse and dusty, a twin bed with a sagging mattress, a dresser piled with old magazines, a window rattling in its frame. The beam caught something, a cardboard box tipped over, its contents spilled across the floor. Papers, photos, a cracked picture frame. "Wind must have knocked it," Lucas said, stepping in, but his frown deepened as he crouched to gather the mess. I hovered in the doorway, my tea-warmed hands now clammy. "That didn't sound like wind," I said, scanning the shadows. The window was shut tight, no draft strong enough to topple a box. My eyes snagged on a photo among the spill. A younger Lucas, maybe 25, with a woman I didn't recognize, her dark hair pulled back, her smile tight. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing. He glanced up, his expression flickering. Surprise, then something darker. "Old friend," he said curtly, shoving the photo back into the box. "Haven't seen her in years." He stood, brushing dust off his jeans, but his hands shook slightly, betraying the calm he was trying to project. Before I could press, a new sound cut through, a low, muffled thump from below, like something heavy hitting the floor. We froze, the flashlight beam swinging to the doorway. "That's not upstairs," I whispered, my heart thudding. Lucas's face hardened, and he motioned me back. "Basement," he said, voice low. "Stay here if you want." "No way," I replied, adrenaline overriding fear. We retraced our steps, the stairs creaking under us, and paused in the living room. The fire still crackled, the mug sat untouched, but the air felt different, charged. Like the storm had slipped inside. Lucas grabbed a poker from the fireplace, handing me the flashlight. "Just in case," he said, and I nodded, gripping it like a lifeline. The basement door was off the kitchen, a narrow slab of wood with a rusty knob. He turned it slowly, the hinges groaning as dank air wafted up, musty, earthy, tinged with something metallic. The stairs descended into shadow, the flashlight barely piercing the gloom. Halfway down, the thump came again, closer, and I stumbled, catching myself on the railing. "What the hell's down here?" I hissed. "Storage mostly," Lucas said, but his voice wavered. At the bottom, the beam revealed a concrete floor, shelves of boxes, a rusty bike. Then it landed on something. A metal filing cabinet, its top drawer ajar, papers spilling out. Lucas approached, poker raised, and yanked it open wider. Inside were files, dozens, maybe hundreds, labeled with names, dates, grainy photos clipped to each. My breath caught as he pulled one out. The name in bold, Jenna Harper. "What the fuck?" I snatched it. the flashlight trembling as I scanned it. My address, my phone number, a log of my work hours, even a photo from last week's team meeting. "Lucas, what is this?" He stared, pale, his mouth working soundlessly. I don't know," he stammered. "This isn't mine." But the lie was thin, and the night's second turn hit me like a freight train. My refuge was a trap, and I was already inside. The basement air turned suffocating, the flashlight's beam shaking in my hand as I clutched the file with my name. Lucas stood frozen, the poker dangling at his side. His eyes wide with something panic, guilt. I couldn't tell. Rain pounded above, a distant roar, but down here, the silence between us was deafening. "Explain?" I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the damp chill. "Now, I didn't." He stumbled over the words, running a hand through his hair. "Jenna, I swear, I've never seen this before." He reached for the file, but I stepped back, clutching it tighter. "Bullshit," I snapped, flipping through the pages. Emails I'd sent, a map of my commute, notes on my coffee order. "This is me, Lucas, my life. How'd it get here?" He shook his head, his face ashen. "I don't know. Maybe someone planted it." "The storm, someone could have planted it." I laughed, harsh and hollow. "In your basement? Under your roof?" I thrust the file at him, the photo of me glaring back. "You've been watching me?" "No." His voice cracked, desperate. I don't even use this cabinet. It's old stuff, from before I moved in." He grabbed another file, Mark Reynolds, and flipped it open. "See? This guy's not even at the agency anymore. These are ancient." I hesitated, the flashlight wavering. Mark had left last year. Could this be leftover junk? But my file was current, dated days ago. "Then why's mine updated?" I demanded. "Who's doing this?" He stared at the papers, then up at me, his eyes pleading. "I don't know, but we'll figure it out, I promise." He set the poker down, hands raised like a surrender. "Let's go upstairs, call someone. IT, security, whoever." I didn't move, my mind racing. Trust him? Run? The storm still raged, trapping me here. "Fine," I said finally, voice cold. "But you're not off the hook." We climbed back up, the stairs groaning, and I kept the flashlight aimed at him, half expecting a move. In the kitchen he grabbed his phone, dialing the agency's nightline. "Hey, it's Lucas. We've got a situation. Files in my basement, employee, data." "Yeah, now." As he spoke, I flipped through my file again, my stomach churning. A note in the margin, subject shows patterns, potential risk. Risk for what? I was mid-thought when a crash split the air. The front door slamming open, wind howling in. Lucas dropped the phone, and I spun, the flashlight catching a figure in the doorway. Tall, hooded, rain-soaked. "Lucas Grant," the figure rasped, stepping inside. A man, late 40s, grizzled, holding a dripping envelope. "You've got something of mine." Lucas paled. "Who the hell are you?" The man tossed the envelope onto the floor. Files slid out, more names, more photos. "You took my work," he said, voice low. "Thought you'd sell it?" He glanced at me, eyes narrowing. "And you brought her here?" "I didn't take anything." Lucas shouted, but the man lunged, grabbing his collar. I swung the flashlight, cracking it against his arm. He grunted, releasing Lucas, and I bolted for the door, rain stinging my face as I stumbled onto the porch. Lucas followed, the man cursing behind us. We ran, the storm swallowing his shouts, until we reached a neighbor's lit porch, pounding on the door. A woman answered, startled, and we spilled inside, breathless. "Call the police," I gasped, and she did. the night dissolving into flashing lights and questions. The man was gone by the time they searched. Files too, but Lucas's story held a former tenant, a data broker, had left the cabinet. My file? A fluke, they said. I didn't buy it, but I was safe, for now. What began as a rainy detour at Lucas's house turned into a night that cracked my world open. The police called it a break-in, tied it to some shady ex-tenant, but the file with my name burned in my memory, too precise, too personal to be random. Lucas swore he was clean, his shock as real as mine, and maybe I believed him. The man in the hood vanished into the storm, a ghost with answers I might never get. I crashed at a hotel that night, the rain a dull hum, my trust in the everyday frayed. By morning, the agency was buzzing. Security audits, hushed talks of a breach. Lucas texted, "I'm sorry, let me make it right." I didn't reply, not yet. I'd always seen work as safe, deadlines, coffee runs, the grind, but now it felt like a stage, shadows moving behind the curtain. Was I a risk? Why? The questions gnawed at me, relentless, as I stared out at the clearing sky. I'd go back to the office, Monday, but not the same Jenna. I'd watch closer, ask more, dig like I hadn't in years. Lucas might be a friend, or a liability. I'd figure it out. The rain had washed away the night's chaos, but not the unease. Some storms don't just pass, they leave you changed, and this one had only just begun to show its fallout.